Okay, I'll try not to turn this into a talks, but yes, as has been said and hinted around multiple times, I love visualization as a really, as I'm saying a couple times, powerful way of storytelling. And so I think I've shown this picture right now in every single one of my talks I've ever given about the Arctic. And I intentionally like leave no labels, there's no jargon, it's just pictures. And so then I give some clues, and what you're looking at is little maps of the Arctic looking downward at the North Pole. And what I really like about this is I want people's eyes to really think about the colors you're seeing. So, if you look at the top maps, you're seeing some blues and reds, but then at the bottom, you're looking at mostly reds. And then I slowly add on some labels. So after you've perceived, these colors and what they might mean, then I show that this is actually showing temperature departures compared to average for the last 40 some years where we have satellite observations. So this really shows that, anywhere that's red is warmer than average and blue is colder than average. So we can clearly see that it's becoming a lot more red. The Arctic is really warming up. And, we'll probably refer to this term many times as polar amplification, this really accelerated warming of the Arctic. And I think, when we think about the Arctic warming, it's important to keep in mind it's not just the air and atmosphere that's warming, but the ocean is warming. So on the right hand side shows, the ocean warming, and the middle shows the sea ice declining, and it's all of these in like the entire Earth system interacting with one another that causes this rapid acceleration. And here's another just visualization showing really what's going on to set our stage for our conversation today. And here's a animation of the amount of thickness and the volume of the ice that's going down over time. And then, we have people in climate science who also study past climate going back thousands of years. So we can visualize that. So this is like a graphic of sea ice changing over the last almost 2,000 years. So we can see on the right-hand side is the recent where we are today in that red dashed line. And clearly the decline that we're experiencing today is, unprecedented in our historical and reconstructed record. And also, it's not just sea ice changing, it's not just the ocean warming, but we also are having impacts to Greenland. The Greenland ice sheet is declining. So here's actually comparing side by side the loss of land ice on both Antarctica and in the Greenland ice sheet going over the last couple decades. So you can see they're both declining, but we're seeing a particularly significant loss on Greenland. And if that has major implications for sea level rise. So it's also not just the ice sheet that's declining, but our glaciers across the Arctic are also losing the amount of ice. So we can see here just a visual of how much and how quickly the loss of glaciers is accelerating around the world. And that all leads to sea level rise, major implications for coastal communities all around our planet. And it's not just flooding when a storm hits, but it's flooding during high tides. They have this phenomenon called sunny day flooding, where it's a sunny day, a high tide, and the water is now coming into, let's say, Miami, into communities where it never did before. And I think I'll, just want to show one more of like where we're going. So everything I've shown in these visuals is like clear pictures of what's happening now in the Arctic. But what does it look like going forward into the future? And a lot of this, the answer to this is based on us. It's decisions, policy decisions that we make depending on how much fossil fuels are emitted. So this graphic is showing, these different types of emission scenarios going forward into the future for the entire planet as it spins around. But of course, there's that real amplified blob of red at the top of our planet. That's the Arctic, and has so many, of course, far-reaching effects. And I think also I'll point out in the top left one is showing a world without humans. So a natural climate change, and you can see that the red doesn't show up there. And I think my whole way of thinking about both my research and communication is how can we take this complex science, often this jargon and just tons of numbers, and how can we turn that into visualizations that can reach all audiences? And it's taken me some time to think of it as storytelling, but now I very much think it's a different and powerful way to sort of communicate change.